Senator Shaheen mentioned that Secretary Rubio did make a phone call to us this afternoon. I think he made it very clear to us that we are the recipients of a proposal that was delivered to one of our representatives. It is not our recommendation. It is not our peace plan.
¿Qué tal, amigos? Hoy lunes 24 de noviembre de este año 2025. El trumpismo, una vez más, está acorralado. Donald Trump acaba de quedar expuesto, en esta ocasión no por demócratas, sino que por su propio partido, el Partido Republicano. No fueron los demócratas, no fue la prensa, no fueron los enemigos del pueblo. Fueron los republicanos del Senado, los cuales, junto a los demócratas, o sea, un bipartidismo real, acaban de destapar que el equipo de Donald Trump básicamente utilizó el traductor de Google para convertir una exigencia rusa en una supuesta propuesta estadounidense de paz. Y digo paz entre comillas, porque lo que estuvieron proponiendo prácticamente es que Ucrania se rindiera por completo, entregara todo el este, desarmaran su ejército y jamás volver a intentar entrar a la OTAN. Un cheque en blanco para Putin, en otras palabras. Sí, bueno, vamos a explicar cómo es que se armó todo este desastre, veremos quién fue que lo filtró y por qué incluso los republicanos están furiosos. Bueno, resulta que hay un senador republicano MAGA, que es Mike Rounds, es super MAGA, y viaja con algunos demócratas al foro de seguridad de Halifax. Bueno, pues ahí le muestran un documento de 28 puntos que el equipo de Donald Trump estaba presentando como el supuesto plan de paz. Pero a ver, amigos, apenas lo leen, ya notan algo muy raro. Y es que tanto la estructura como las frases que se utilizan, la sintaxis, al parecer estaba escrito primero en ruso y luego lo pasaron a inglés utilizando Google Translate, o sea, el traductor de Google. No exagero, amigos, literalmente esta propuesta se parece más a un manual de rendición para Zelensky, con un plazo límite. O acepta o Estados Unidos deja de apoyar a Ucrania. Bueno, pues este senador republicano, Mike Rounds, se quedó helado y comenzó a hacer lo que cualquier persona con dos dedos haría, ¿no? Llamar al secretario de Estado, Marco Rubio, a Rubio, que pues, forma parte del gabinete de Trump, y le pregunta, oye, ¿qué está pasando? Bueno, pues al parecer Rubio comenzó a tartamudear que no, que ese no es el plan de Estados Unidos, que es un borrador ruso, que la prensa lo malinterpretó, que tal vez Rusia lo filtró, o sea, básicamente comenzó a inventarse excusas. Pero bueno, quiero que escuchemos esto de la propia boca de este senador republicano. Escuchen.
Senator Shaheen mentioned that Secretary Rubio did make a phone call to us this afternoon. I think he made it very clear to us that we are the recipients of a proposal that was delivered to one of our representatives. It is not our recommendation. It is not our peace plan. It is a proposal that was received, and as an intermediary, we have made arrangements to share it, and we did not release it. It was leaked. It was not released by our members or our representatives. So as we move through on this thing here, Representative Rubio has made it clear that this is an opportunity to have received it and that it has been utilized and delivered to the Ukrainians and that they will have an opportunity to respond.
Después de eso, el Departamento de Estado sale a decir: esto es falso. Este plan es de Estados Unidos, pero con participación de rusos y ucranianos. Claro, excepto que Ucrania dijo, nosotros no hemos enviado nada de eso. Y bueno, los legisladores en Washington también estaban completamente sorprendidos. Marco Rubio intentó cubrir a Trump diciendo que fue en un marco de negociación creado por Estados Unidos y en Estados Unidos, pero bueno, ya nadie le compra el cuento, ¿no? Luego tenemos a este otro senador que es Angus King, el cual estuvo en la misma conferencia y también contradice la versión oficial. Veamos esto.
This has been an extraordinary weekend, both because of the sessions that we've had with people from all over the world, but also because of the communication, as was mentioned today, from Secretary Rubio and the leaked 28-point plan, which, according to Secretary Rubio, is not the administration's position. It is essentially the wish list of the Russians that is now being presented to the Europeans and to the Ukrainians. It does provide a guideline to try to narrow the issues between Ukraine and Russia. And the encouraging thing to me is that the administration is not attempting to negotiate this agreement unilaterally, but indeed is in close consultation in the next few days with Ukraine and with our European allies. So I think that's an important development. All of us read that statement yesterday. We're alarmed by it, I think. That's a fair statement. It turns out that it is a sort of a beginning point for negotiations, and we'll see where the discussions go from here. Everyone wants this war to end, but we want it to end on a fair and just peace that respects the integrity and the sovereignty of the country of Ukraine, and does not reward aggression, and also provides adequate security guarantees so that something like what occurred in 2022 does not occur again.
Ahora bien, amigos, hay reportes por parte de Bloomberg, de Reuters, de Axios, que nos muestran que el origen de este plan no fue Washington, sino que al parecer fue Miami. Hay un personaje en este momento llamado Kirill Dmitriev, jefe del Fondo Soberano de Rusia, y es mano derecha de Putin. Estuvo en ciertas reuniones con congresistas republicanos, como lo es Ana Paulina Luna. Estuvo ahí regalando regalitos, chocolates, libros con la cara de Putin. No es broma, señores. Todo esto en el Hotel Faena. Es un resort de lujo en Miami Beach. Y bueno, también se reunió, adivinen, con Jared Kushner. Así es, señores. Con Steve Witkoff, el empresario más cercano al trumpismo en este momento, y ahora enviado de Estados Unidos a Rusia, ¿no? Y según la investigación, Dmitriev entregó el famoso plan de 28 puntos, el mismo documento que terminó en manos del círculo trumpista. Alguien lo filtró, ya es innegable, lo filtraron a la prensa como si fuera la propuesta de Estados Unidos, y Donald Trump simplemente lo adoptó y sin leerlo. Luego J.D. Vance sale y dice que el plan es razonable, que es el marco correcto. Pero a ver, quienes lo critican no entienden la realidad. Lo mismo, Caroline Leavitt intentó hacerlo, pero amigos, es el plan ruso. Para que vean cómo J.D. Vance y compañero lo defendieron, escuchen esto.
Ask you also about this Ukraine plan.
Yeah.
President Zelensky said today that his country would risk either giving up a partner or giving up its dignity. There's been criticism that this deal...
You mean he doesn't like it?
It's unclear. He was sort of
Well,
pretending...
he'll have to like it, and if he doesn't like it, then, they should just keep fighting, I guess,
The suggestion that he made, though, was that if he doesn't accept it, that the U.S. would pull back its support for Ukraine. Is that...
Well, at some point he's going to have to accept something. He hasn't accepted. You remember right in the Oval Office not so long ago, I said, you don't have the cards. Don't forget, I inherited this war. This war never would have happened. I inherited this war. And I thought he should have made a deal a year ago, 2 years ago. The ultimate deal would have been if it never started. That would have been the good deal. That could have been done too if you had the right president, but you didn't have the right president.
Cuando Donald Trump está en el despacho oval, un periodista lo confronta con este tema, ¿no? Y bueno, básicamente Trump confirma que ese es su plan y que si Zelensky no lo acepta, pues bueno, puede seguir peleando con su corazoncito. Vean esto.
No, not my plan. No, we'd like to get the peace. It should have happened a long time ago. The Ukraine war with Russia should have never happened. If I were president, it never would have happened. We're trying to get it ended. One way or the other, we have to get it ended. So are you willing to deliver? Then he can continue. Then he can continue to fight his little heart out.
Luego, en otra aparición pública, vuelve a insistir en que es su oferta final para Ucrania. Aquí está el momento.
Go ahead.
On Ukraine, you said this is a good plan. So according to our sources, this proposal demands major concessions from Ukraine and doesn't demand much from Russia. So was Russia involved in drafting
Your
this?
understanding is wrong. Have you read the full plan? You haven't.
Sources said.
Yes.
So if you can give details, maybe.
You've read reporting from one side of the war. And so I want you to understand that the administration has talked equally with both sides. You have seen President Trump engage directly with both President Putin and President Zelensky. Likewise, his national security team has as well. In fact, Special Envoy Witkoff and Secretary Rubio met with some of the Ukrainians just in the past week to discuss this very plan. And so just like you saw with respect to Israel and Gaza, we are hearing out both sides of this war to understand what can you commit to end the war? And that's ultimately how we are going to get to an agreeable solution. That's what the president has directed of his team. I know there's a lot of criticism out there and a lot of doubters, but I would just remind you of the historic success that this president and his team accomplished in the Middle East. We believe that is possible with Russia and Ukraine, and we're hoping and working very hard to achieve.
Mientras todo esto sucedía, los aliados de Estados Unidos, Reino Unido, Alemania, Italia, Japón, Canadá, España. En ese momento todos publicaron una declaración conjunta diciendo que el plan dejaba a Ucrania totalmente expuesta, que limitaba su defensa y que no iban a aceptar cambios de fronteras que sean impuestos por la fuerza. O sea, básicamente ese plan no lo aceptamos. Y bueno, analistas europeos incluso notaron que el documento parecía claramente, ¿no? Hasta ellos se dieron cuenta. Traducido del ruso con frases como Rusia deberá no invadir países vecinos. Bueno, señores, esto es un poco más técnico, pero nadie que hable inglés se lo escribe así, al menos que lo haya escrito en otro idioma y lo haya pasado a ruso y lo haya pasado a inglés. Y bueno, por si faltaba algo, mientras todo eso ocurría, Donald Trump estaba hablando por teléfono con Jair Bolsonaro, ¿no? Justo cuando Bolsonaro estaba intentando escapar de Brasil. Es más, un periodista se lo mencionó a Trump y bueno, él se hace el sorprendido como si no supiera nada, ¿no? Vean ese momento.
You have any comment about Bolsonaro's arrest? A former Brazilian president. So I spoke last night to the gentleman you just referred to, and we're going to be meeting, I believe, in the very near future. Sir, are you willing about the president being arrested today? What? Any comment about the former Brazilian president being arrested today? No, I don't know anything about it. Are you willing? Mr. President, are you willing? I didn't hear. Is that what happened? Yes, there's a Mr. That's too bad. That's too bad. No, I just think it's too bad.
Para cerrar el círculo, una senadora demócrata cuenta lo que escuchó directamente en la llamada con Marco Rubio, junto con los republicanos presentes. Y bueno, nos confirma que Rubio admitió que era un plan ruso antes de cambiar el discurso en público. Vean esto.
Throughout the weekend, I have made it clear that I believe this is a Russian proposal. I hope that tomorrow's negotiations in Geneva focus on a real framework for negotiation that guarantees an outcome that benefits Ukraine rather than Russia. I think any real peace plan needs to be sustainable and backed by Ukraine's government and its people. It should be developed in full consideration and consultation with our allies who are going to help guarantee a ceasefire and any long-term peace deal. It should include meaningful security guarantees that assure Ukraine and our allies on the continent that we won't see Russia invade Ukraine again in a few years. And I think the United States Congress, on a bipartisan basis, including here at this forum, if you listen to the members of this delegation, have reiterated our support for Ukraine. We believe it's critical that we maintain intelligence sharing and military assistance should remain in place until a real peace deal is reached.
Al final, amigos, este plan ruso se convirtió en el plan de Donald Trump. ¿Y por qué sucede todo esto? Es simple, por incompetencia, por opacidad y, claro, por intereses de un gobierno que en este momento es totalmente inútil. Ahora bien, señores, tenemos nueva información sobre este tema de las amenazas en contra de los congresistas, en contra de los demócratas, y es que en esta ocasión tenemos a un ex funcionario del Departamento de Seguridad Nacional diciendo que Donald Trump habla completamente en serio cuando pide encarcelar y antes incluso hasta ejecutar a legisladores demócratas. Y yo se los prometo que cuando escuchen a alguien que trabajó con Trump decir que las amenazas son muy reales, van a poder entender que esto ya no es una simple pelea política. Esto es una advertencia. Exactamente se trata del ex jefe del gabinete del Departamento de Seguridad Nacional, es Miles Taylor, el cual afirmó que las amenazas de Donald Trump no son un chiste, que tampoco son sarcasmo, ¿no? Recordemos que todos están acostumbrados al sarcasmo trumpista. Pero bueno, él explica cómo esas amenazas escalan hacia la vida real, cómo afectan a los funcionarios, a los ex colaboradores e incluso a las familias. Veamos de qué se trata.
Bring in Miles Taylor, former Homeland Security Chief of Staff, Democratic strategist Jenna Arnold, and MS Now political analyst Alexei McCann. I mean, I'm still thinking it's extraordinary that that had to be clarified. But Miles, you've got personal experience with being publicly threatened by the president. What emotions does this trigger for you? And what are these targets and their families going through right now?
Well, the threats are very, very real, Alex, and I'm certainly not comforted by the fact that the White House has walked it back from hanging these members of Congress to only putting them in prison. That doesn't give me a lot of comfort. And, you know, as I've said to folks before, when Donald Trump accuses someone of sedition and treason, even if he's not serious about those words, his supporters are serious about those words, and they make sure of it. They make sure to threaten you, to dox you, to put your family in danger. That's exactly what happened to us. And then the blast radius is often beyond just you yourself, and it becomes your family members and friends. I've had my wife threatened. I've had my one-year-old daughter threatened because I simply exercised my First Amendment rights to speak out against this president. But Alex, this also leads me to the core of what these Democratic lawmakers were saying was not that that people in the military should disobey the lawful orders of the commander-in-chief. They should disobey the illegal orders. It's right. And it strikes me, Alex, that within 48 hours of Donald Trump first coming out and condemning them, a judge found those troop deployments in D.C. to be illegal. Military lawyers thought the boat strikes were illegal in the Caribbean. There was a probe into illegal mortgage inquiries in the Trump administration. A judge resumed probes of illegal ICE flights. And then to top it all off, a study showed that the Justice Department has illegally defied the courts 26 times of this administration. That's just a sample within 48 hours of the illegal things that this administration is requiring people to do.
Miles, I want to ask you about what you heard from Scott Bessent there, not far from the president's message. But first of all, what do you think of the original video? Should it have been produced? And second, Bessent's position may not surprise you, but how should GOP Congress members be reacting? Because some are not directly condemning his words.
Look, they should be condemning his words. And what I would say to the Treasury Secretary, if he wants sources of people who will say that Donald Trump has ordered them to do illegal things, all he needs to look at is his predecessors, the former White House Chief of Staff, Donald Trump's former Secretary of State, his former Secretary of Defense, his former Attorney General, his former National Security Advisor, his former Secretary of Homeland Security, his former White House Comms Director. I could go on. These are people who have publicly disclosed that Donald Trump asked them to do, at best, immoral things, and in many cases, things that would have been illegal if they had carried them forward. There is a long history. I would be very surprised if the Treasury Secretary himself hasn't been asked to do illegal things. So my concern is less so these Democratic members retracting the video. In fact, I think they should stand by the video. And it's more the threats of intimidation against whistleblowers in this administration, because we need people to come forward and expose wrongdoing and misconduct. And this administration has made it more dangerous. And so, Alex, it's why this week we responded at defiance.org with emergency grants to provide legal aid to whistleblowers who are willing to come forward and expose presidential misconduct.
So, Jenna, the president was rage posting about this overnight, and here's how he responded when a friendly Fox interviewer extended an off-ramp. Let's listen to it.
In the old days, if you said a thing like that, that was punishable by death.
Yeah, but you're not threatening them. A lot of people are interpreting there's a threat and there's security.
Well, I'm not threatening them, but I think they're in serious trouble. I would say they're in serious trouble. I'm not threatening death, but I think they're in serious trouble. In the old days, it was death.
How do you interpret that?
I'm as uncomfortable with it as you are, but I've been this uncomfortable with that man for 14 years, just like you. And what I see here is what Trump is really saying with these threats is that I'm scared you're not afraid of me anymore. And I do think what we all have to prepare for is that this is likely going to escalate, that this will continue to be his normalized strategy. As a former first grade teacher, the best job I have ever had, I have watched plenty of first grade bullies on the playground tell their peers that the only way that you can be protected is via me. And he or those bullies start to lose power when those other students realize that the best way that they can protect themselves is when they band together. And Trump is watching the courts say no. He's watching his military say that they can say no if something's unconstitutional. Communities are proving to him that they don't need him anymore. Lindsey Graham is turning on him. And this is one of those, I continue to think, gosh, the last thrashes of a dying shark are always the strongest. And what are those going to be? But I still think we have a lot more coming. And this is why it's so important that we break the cycle, that any sort of strong man theory that a single man can protect us is outdated and wrong. And it's actually your community that's going to be in your best interest.
Alexei, I want you to weigh on this as well. In this regard, Trump cannot possibly know or not think that what he says doesn't have an effect like this. So this plausible deniability, no, I'm not calling for their execution, but they're going to be in trouble. I mean, he's got to know what happens to people.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. And also, it's just interesting considering this is happening 3 months after the horrific murder of Charlie Kirk, which, as far as we know, was not totally politically motivated and was certainly not orchestrated by Democrats or Democrats' rhetoric. But after that, a lot of Republicans, including the president, said things to the effect of, well, Democrats and their rhetoric are leading to more political violence. They have been aware of how allegedly, they say, rhetoric leads to violence. And it is really striking to see the president retweeting these things or resharing these things, posting these things himself, walking it back halfway, kind of to your point, but sort of.
Ok, amigos, esto sin duda alguna es muy fuerte. Miles Taylor, alguien que ya estuvo dentro del gobierno trumpista, no te está especulando, no te está inventando y no está exagerando. Nos está contando lo que vivió. Lo dice clarito, ¿no? Aunque Donald Trump literalmente no quiera, ¿no? Quiera colgar o encarcelar a demócratas. El problema es que sus seguidores sí se lo toman literal y actúan en consecuencia. Ya lo pasó antes. Pasó con él mismo, pasó con su familia. Y lo dice textual, ¿no? Su esposa fue amenazada, su hija de 1 año fue amenazada. O sea, ya no vemos el clásico discurso político de Trump. Es una creación activa, ¿no? De un ecosistema de intimidad. Aquí es lo grave porque Donald Trump sabe perfectamente que su audiencia, que sus radicales, que su base, responde siempre de forma radical a sus palabras. Él lo sabe perfectamente desde el año 2016. Lo sabe cuando sucedió el 6 de enero. Lo sabe porque lo ha visto una y otra vez. Así que cuando él lanza frases como en los viejos tiempos era pena de muerte, mientras habla de legisladores demócratas, él entiende el peso de esa frase. Él no está improvisando. Él está enviando como un mensaje. Y lo peor es que ese mensaje está diseñado para generar miedo. He visto que algunos argumentan que Trump solo está exagerando, ¿no? Que es la retórica política de siempre y que los demócratas también usan frases muy fuertes. Pero, a ver, amigos, ningún otro presidente en una democracia moderna ha insinuado que legisladores opositores deberían de ser ejecutados. Yo no he visto otro líder con millones de seguidores que haya visto cómo sus palabras se convierten en amenazas reales a funcionarios o a sus opositores, a sus enemigos, y aún así continúa. Ningún otro político utiliza hasta este nivel la intimidación como una estrategia. Además, si fuera una retórica vacía como dicen, ¿por qué personajes como Miles Taylor necesitan seguridad personal? ¿Por qué sus familias reciben amenazas? ¿Por qué hay tantos ex colaboradores que han hablado de presiones ilegales desde dentro? La realidad es que el peligro no está solo en lo que Trump dice, sino en lo que sus seguidores creen que deben de hacer cuando él lo dice. Las palabras de Donald Trump no son un error, no son un chiste, y no son solo política. Son parte de un patrón que él ya ha diseñado, ya lo sabe, ya de memoria le sale naturalmente. Es un patrón de intimidación, lo cual sin duda alguna pone en riesgo la estabilidad democrática de un país. Pues bueno, ya lo ha hecho mucho en Estados Unidos. ¿Qué opinan ustedes? ¿Creen que estas amenazas de Donald Trump son parte de una estrategia política o un verdadero riesgo para la democracia? ¿Piensan que los demócratas tal vez deberían de responder más fuerte, no? O tal vez que esto solo le da más poder al trumpismo. Los leo en los comentarios. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarme en este video. Recuerden, como siempre, déjame tu like, comparte el contenido y suscríbete al canal. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Hasta luego.